The rain hammered Chicago streets like a boxer working a speed bag, relentless and unforgiving. I stood at the window of my 14th floor office in the Loop, watching the city blur into streaks of neon and gray. My phone vibrated against the polished oak desk, a low hum cutting through the storm's roar. It was 7:42 p.m., and I just hung up on a New York investor, the kind who spoke in millions like they were spare change. A $32 million merger hung in the balance, my name tied to every dotted line. I was Arden Langley, the woman who could close deals with a handshake and a stare that said, "Don't waste my time." But that buzz on my desk, it wasn't about the deal. It was about her, my mother, Clara. I grabbed the phone, expecting another curt text from my sister, Elise. Her messages were always sharp, like a paper cut you didn't see coming. On our way out, "Don't worry, all good." That was her at noon, no warmth, no details, just enough to keep me from asking questions. I'd assumed she and her husband Marcus were taking Mom to her cardiologist, or maybe to the grocery store. Mom was 74, sharp as ever, but her knees weren't what they used to be. I figured they were handling it, like they always claimed they did. I didn't ask. I learned not to. My family had a way of turning questions into landmines. But this wasn't Elise. The screen showed an unknown number, 312 area code. Chicago. I frowned, my thumb hesitating over the answer button. Something in my gut twisted, a warning I couldn't name. I pressed it to my ear. "Ms. Arden Langley?" The voice was polite but urgent, a young man trying to sound calm. "This is O'Hare Airport, customer service. It's about your mother, Clara Langley. She's been in our lounge for, well, most of the day. Alone." The world tilted. My office, with its sleek furniture and framed awards, seemed to shrink, the walls closing in like a trap. "Alone?" My voice came out sharp, like I was interrogating a witness. "What do you mean, alone?" "She said her children told her to wait while they checked in for a flight, but they never came back. We checked the manifests. They boarded a plane to Maui this morning, about 8 hours ago." The phone slipped in my hand, slick with sudden sweat. 8 hours. My mother sitting there, waiting, while Elise and Marcus sipped cocktails at 30,000 feet. I saw her in my mind, her soft gray scarf, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes scanning the crowd for faces that weren't coming. I didn't breathe for a good 10 seconds. The investor's voice from earlier echoed faintly in my head. "Arden, you're our closer. Don't let this slip." But that was gone now. The deal, the money, the boardroom, it all dissolved into static. "I'm on my way," I said, my voice colder than the rain outside. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and my bag, ignoring the junior associate calling after me. "Emergency," I snapped, already halfway to the elevator. The doors closed, and I was alone with my reflection, my jaw tight, my knuckles white around my keys. They left her. They left her. The drive to O'Hare was a blur of danger and desperation. Rain lashed my windshield, wipers screaming to keep up. I took I-90 at a speed that would have gotten me pulled over if the cops weren't busy elsewhere. A semi-truck loomed in my lane, its taillights glowing like demon eyes through the storm. I swerved, tires skidding on wet asphalt, my heart slamming against my ribs as the truck's horn blared. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Every red light felt like a betrayal. Every second a theft from her. I whispered to myself over and over, "Just get to her. Just get to her." My voice cracked, the words splintering like glass. I remembered the last Thanksgiving, the way Elise had laughed, her wineglass catching the light. "Mom's getting so forgetful," she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "She can barely keep up with her own schedule," Marcus had nodded, his smirk hidden behind a sip of bourbon. "She's slowing us down, Arden. You know how it is." My stepfather Victor had just grunted, his silver watch glinting as he checked the time. "She's old. She won't notice." I'd let it slide then, chalked it up to holiday stress. But now I saw it for what it was, a pattern, a plan. The airport terminal was a chaotic hive, people dragging suitcases, shouting into phones, sipping overpriced coffee like the world wasn't falling apart. I didn't bother with long-term parking. I pulled into the short-term lot, left the engine running, and sprinted through the rain. My heels slapped the concrete, the sound sharp against the terminal's hum. A valet yelled something about a ticket, but I didn't hear it. I didn't care. My world had narrowed to one image: Mom, alone, waiting. I found her in the first-class lounge, past Gate C, curled into a leather chair like something discarded. Her scarf had slipped from her shoulder, and her face was pale, thinner than I remembered. She looked small, fragile in a way that made my stomach twist. A paper coffee cup sat untouched beside her, like she didn't trust it enough to drink. Her eyes blinked slowly, unfocused, staring at the sliding glass doors as if they might still open for her. "Mom?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her lips moved, forming my name. "Arden?" It was soft, almost childlike, and it hit me like a punch. I'd seen her strong, stubborn, even sharp-tongued, but never like this. Never so lost. I dropped to my knees beside her, the industrial carpet rough against my skin. "It's me, I'm here." Her hand reached for my cheek, her fingers cold, trembling. "I thought they were just checking in," she said, her voice cracking at the edges. "They said they've come back." I swallowed the rage burning in my throat. "They lied, Mom. They left you. But I'm here now." I wrapped my arms around her, feeling the sharp edges of her shoulders through her sweater. She was lighter than she should have been, like the hours had worn her down to bone. A stranger slowed as they passed, their eyes lingering before they moved on. I helped Mom to her feet, careful with her joints, and draped my coat over her shoulders. She shivered, despite the warmth. I guided her toward the exit, one arm around her waist, her weight leaning into me like she couldn't stand alone. My phone buzzed as we reached the elevator. I ignored it, but it buzzed again, and again. I pulled it out, my fingers shaking as I typed, "Where are you? Do you know you left her here for 12 hours? The response came as we stepped outside. The rain now would drizzle, cold against my skin. "Elise, don't make this a big deal, Arden. Mom's always confused. We needed a break." I read it twice, the words searing into me like a brand. Mom's always confused. Like Clara was a glitch, a burden they could shrug off. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood, forcing myself not to scream in front of her. "You okay, baby?" Mom asked, her voice soft, but it carried that old strength, the kind that had pulled me through skinned knees and broken hearts. I forced a smile. "Let's get out of here." The valet shouted out again about my car, but I waved him off, settling Mom into the passenger seat. I buckled her in, my hands gentle, like she was a child again. A voice called out behind me, "Ma'am." I turned to see a lounge staff member, a short woman with thick glasses and a blue lanyard, approaching cautiously. I saw what happened. "If you want, we can show you the security footage. It might help." My stomach churned, but I nodded. She led me through a staff-only hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The security room was small, lined with monitors. One screen showed time-stamped footage, Elise and Marcus striding away from the lounge, coffee cups in hand, laughing. No hesitation, no backward glances. Marcus tossed his boarding pass into a trash bin as they headed for security. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was abandonment.
"Turn it off," I said, my voice tight. The woman hesitated. "Please." She clicked the screen dark, her eyes soft with pity. "I'm so sorry." "Me too," I muttered, walking back to the car. Mom was humming softly, an old hymn she used to sing while baking bread in our old Evanston kitchen. She smiled when I slid into the driver's seat, like nothing had happened, like her faith could still hold her together. "I'm sorry you had to leave work," she said. I didn't answer, just buckled her in again, the click of the seatbelt feeling like a vow. As I pulled onto the freeway, the city lights smearing through the rain, I whispered to myself, "They don't get another chance. Never again." Mom's hand rested on the console, and I squeezed it gently. She leaned her head against the window, murmuring, "I knew you'd come." The drive home was quiet, but the danger wasn't over. As I turned onto my street in Lincoln Park, a black SUV peeled out from a side alley, cutting me off. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching, Mom gasping beside me. The SUV's windows were tinted, its driver invisible. It lingered for a moment, then sped off into the night. My hands shook on the wheel, my pulse pounding. Was it random, or was someone watching? I got Mom inside, locking the door behind us. The hallway lights flickered, a reminder of the wiring I hadn't fixed. I settled her on the couch, fluffed the pillows, and draped a quilt over her knees. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of the fridge. I made chicken noodle soup, the kind she used to make when I was sick, but she only stirred it, her spoon clinking against the bowl. Her eyes looked tired, hollow, like the airport had stolen something vital. "Maybe they got mixed up," she said suddenly, her voice barely audible. "Maybe they didn't mean to leave me." "They didn't, Mom," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. I softened it. "Remember when you taught me to tie my shoes? You said, 'Loop it tight, Arden, so it holds.' They didn't loop anything. They just walked away." Her shoulders sagged, and the silence stretched again. Later, after she'd fallen asleep on the couch, I grabbed my laptop and slipped into the kitchen. The pit in my stomach wouldn't ease. Something about their plan felt too clean, too deliberate. I texted an old contact, a guy who worked IT for United Airlines. "Can you pull a manifest? Flight 672 to Maui, this morning." He owed me a favor from a deal I saved years ago. Within an hour, the email arrived. The PDF loaded slowly, each pixel a knife in my gut. Passenger list, 18 names. Not even Clara Langley. Not even a standby. They'd never booked her a seat. I stared at the screen, my hands gripping the countertop so hard my nails dug into the wood. They planned it, packed their bags, posted their Instagram stories with tropical filters, and left her behind like an afterthought. My phone buzzed again. Marcus this time. "Hey Arden, chill. Mom wasn't up for Maui. Too hot, too much walking. You're always so dramatic." I didn't reply. I couldn't. The casual cruelty of it burned too deep. I called him instead, my voice low, controlled. "You left her at O'Hare for 12 hours. No call, no text, nothing." He sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. "She can't keep up, Arden. You're the golden child, right? We knew you'd swoop in. You always do." My mouth went dry. "You thought I'd what?" "She's your favorite, always has been. We just did what was easiest." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, the silence louder than his words. They'd counted on me to clean up their mess, to be the safety net they didn't deserve. I walked back to the living room. Mom was still asleep, her hands folded like she was praying in her dreams. Her purse had tipped over, spilling its contents across the couch. I reached to close it and saw a small ivory envelope, my name scrawled in her familiar cursive. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a card, soft blue with a painted daisy. "Thank you for always listening, Arden. You got my heart, even when they called it soft. I hope one day we can all be whole again. Love, Mom." The postmark was blank, dated 4 days ago. 4 days before they left her to rot. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I slipped the card back into her purse and sat beside her, watching her breathe. The rain had stopped, but the city outside felt darker, heavier. This wasn't just about a trip. This was a betrayal, a line drawn in the sand, and I was done pretending we were still a family. The next morning, I woke to a sharp knock at my door. 3 raps, confident, official. My heart sank. I opened it to find a woman in a gray blazer, clipboard in hand. "Arden Langley, I'm Lorraine Carter, Adult Protective Services. We received a report about your mother, Clara. May I come in?" My blood ran cold. A report? I stepped aside, my mind racing. Lorraine's eyes swept the apartment, Mom's scarf on the couch, the folded laundry, the soup bowl still on the table. "The report alleges Clara was removed from O'Hare against her will. she said, her voice calm but probing. "It mentions isolation and possible financial coercion." I blinked, the words hitting like a slap. "Who filed this?" She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Elise, it had to be. I showed her everything: texts, emails, the flight manifest. "No seat was booked for her," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "I have security footage timestamps if you need them." Lorraine reviewed the files, her expression softening. "This contradicts the report entirely," she said. "I see no abuse here. Quite the opposite." She paused, lowering her voice. "Families like yours, this isn't uncommon. Some push their responsibilities onto those who still care." I nodded, my throat tight. She handed me her card. "If this escalates, call me. Don't wait." I thanked her, closing the door as the weight of her words settled. This wasn't just abandonment. This was a setup. That night, as I locked the apartment, I heard a faint scrape outside. I peered through the peephole, my pulse spiking. A shadow moved in the hallway, too tall to be a neighbor. I waited, holding my breath until it was gone. But the unease lingered, a warning that this fight was far from over. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond my apartment window, but the light felt cold, like it was mocking the storm brewing inside me. Mom sat at the kitchen table, peeling an orange with slow, deliberate hands, her soft humming filling the silence. It was the same hymn from last night, the one she had sung while kneading dough in our old Evanston kitchen. But her eyes were distant, her fingers trembling just enough to betray the calm she was trying to project. I hadn't told her about the shadow in the hallway last night, or the black SUV that had nearly run me off the road. I didn't want to scare her. Not yet. I poured coffee, the gurgle of the machine grounding me as I replayed Lorraine's visit from Adult Protective Services. Elisa's report was a calculated jab, a way to paint me as the villain while she and Marcus played victims. But they'd underestimated me. I wasn't the Arden that let their snide comments slide at family dinners. I was done swallowing their poison. "Arden, honey," Mom said, her voice soft but piercing the quiet. "You're staring at that mug like it owes you money." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I forced a laugh, setting the coffee down. "Just thinking, Mom, you want to go to church tomorrow, like old times?" Her hands stilled, the orange peel curling in her palm. "Church," she repeated, testing the word. "I want to sit in that sanctuary again. I want people to see me." Her voice hardened, not with anger, but with something fiercer, resolve. "I don't want to hide." I nodded, my chest tightening. She wasn't just talking about church. She was talking about reclaiming her place, her dignity, after Elise and Marcus tried to erase her. "Then we'll go," I said. "Maple Ridge, 9 a.m.
The next morning, the old white church on Maple Ridge smelled of polished wood and candle wax, just like it did when I was a kid. I helped Mom into her gray cardigan, brushing her hair gently as she sat by the mirror. She looked stronger today, her chin lifted, her eyes clear. But as we stepped into the sanctuary, the air shifted. Heads turned, some subtle, some not. Whispers slithered through the pews. I caught fragments. Clara Langley, airport, her own kids. News traveled fast in Chicago, especially in a place like this where gossip was as sacred as the hymns. We took a seat in the back row, Mom's hand light on my arm. She moved with a quiet grace, like she was carrying the weight of her story but refusing to let it bow her. Reverend Ellis stepped to the pulpit at 10 sharp, his voice warm but steady. Today's message is about honor, not just from children to parents, but from parents to children, the cycle of dignity. Mom's breath caught, and I placed my hand over hers. The sermon wove through stories of respect, of love that doesn't flourish where shame lives. I saw Mom blink hard, her fingers tightening around mine. Then the side door creaked open, and my stomach dropped. Elise and Marcus slipped in, late, like they always were. Elise wore a powder blue blouse, her face a mask of innocence, while Marcus trailed behind, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the room. They spotted us, and Elise's gasp was loud enough to turn heads. "Mom," she said, her voice dripping with false relief, "you're here. We've been so worried." Marcus nodded, his face carved from stone. "We've been trying to reach you," he added, his tone flat, rehearsed. The congregation stirred, eyes darting between us. I said nothing, letting them perform their charade. Reverend Ellis paused, his gaze flickering toward the disturbance. Elise started down the aisle, her heels clicking, her arms outstretched like she was in a Hallmark movie. "You should have told us where you were staying," she said, loud enough for the front row to hear. Mom stood, slow and deliberate, her cardigan slipping slightly from her shoulder. The sanctuary went still. "I need to say something," she said, her voice trembling but clear. Reverend Ellis nodded, stepping back from the pulpit. Mom faced the congregation, her eyes fixed on the cross above the altar. She said, "You weren't looking for me. I waited, believing you'd come back, but you didn't. Not my daughter, not my son-in-law, just silence." She turned, her gaze sweeping the room, steady now. "I've been made to feel like a burden for years, but that morning, I saw clearly. My daughter Arden came for me. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask who should have gone first. She showed up." The silence broke with a single clap, then another, until the sanctuary thundered with applause. Reverend Ellis bowed his head, his eyes glistening. Elise's face drained of color, her lips parting but no words coming. Marcus's jaw locked, his hands fisting at his sides. They stood frozen, then turned and slipped out, their footsteps swallowed by the crowd's approval. Outside, the crisp Chicago air hit us like a release. Elise was waiting by the curb, her pearl earrings catching the sunlight. She stormed toward us, her voice low but venomous. "What did you tell her?" she hissed at me. "Nothing," I said, meeting her glare. "She saw you clearly for the first time." Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed. "You've poisoned her against her own family." "No," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "You did that yourselves." They didn't respond, just turned and walked away, their shoes clacking on the pavement like they were fleeing their own guilt. Back home, the silence felt lighter. Mom sat at the kitchen table, slicing peaches, humming that same hymn. "I think I can sleep tonight," she said, sliding a bowl toward me. I smiled, the weight in my chest loosening for the first time in days. But peace was fleeting. That night, my phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A smooth voice greeted me. "Ms. Langley, this is Evelyn Hart, attorney for the Langley family estate. There are developments concerning your father's trust. We need to speak, preferably before others do." My pulse quickened. Mom looked up from her tea, her eyes searching mine. "Who was that, honey?" "A lawyer," I said, keeping my voice steady. "About Dad's estate." Her face went still, unreadable. "That was 4 years ago," she said softly. "I know. Something's not right." The next day, we drove to Evelyn's office downtown, the elevator ride to the 10th floor silent except for the hum of the cables. Mom's hands were folded in her lap, her gaze distant, like she was sifting through memories I couldn't reach. Evelyn greeted us, her handshake firm, her office lined with framed certificates that screamed credibility. She didn't waste time. "Your father, Victor, passed away 4 years ago. His 2014 will named Clara as the sole beneficiary, but last year, a revised will surfaced submitted by Elise and Marcus to probate court. Your name, Clara, is absent." Mom's hand moved toward the document, then stopped. "That's not Victor's handwriting," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Evelyn nodded. "You're not the first to notice. The signature was witnessed by Elise and Marcus." Silence settled like fog. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding. You're saying they erased her, I said, my voice low. After everything. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came. I was married to him for 41 years. He promised I'd be safe. Evelyn leaned forward. We can challenge it. Handwriting analysis, digital trails. It's a path, but they'll fight dirty. Mom pulled her hand back, folding it in her lap. No, she said, her voice steady now. I don't want their money. I want their lies exposed. I want the truth to sting. I looked at her, stunned. Mom? I want them to lose their faces, she said, her eyes locked on Evelyn. Their reputation, their illusion. I nodded, understanding the weight of her choice. This wasn't about revenge, it was about dignity. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city's hum felt like a pulse, urging me to act. I opened my laptop, diving into old consulting contacts, people who owed me favors from deals long past. Digital fingerprints don't lie. I found it in an hour. The revised will, created on Elise's work laptop, the user ID embedded in the metadata. Sloppy. She hadn't even covered her tracks. I flagged the file, encrypted it, and sent it to Evelyn. The work felt like breathing, like reclaiming ground they'd tried to steal. But danger followed. At 2 a.m., I stepped out to stretch, the kitchen lights still on. A white envelope sat on the table, in Mom's cursive. Inside was her old silver locket, the one Dad gave her on their 20th anniversary, and a note. You gave me back my voice, now use yours. I held the locket, its weight heavy with meaning. Then I heard it, a faint click at the front door. My heart stopped. I crept to the peephole, seeing nothing but darkness. But the lock jiggled, someone testing it. I grabbed my phone, ready to dial 911, but the sound stopped. Silence. Too much silence. The next day, I installed a deadbolt and a camera. I didn't tell Mom. She didn't need more fear. But as I drove to the grocery store, a black SUV tailed me, too close, its tinted windows hiding the driver. I took a sharp turn, my tires screeching, and lost them in traffic. My hands shook, but I kept driving. Someone was watching, and I knew who. 2 days later, an email arrived from Elise. Family dinner, let's heal. The smiley face was a knife twist. I showed it to Mom on the back porch, the Chicago skyline glowing in the distance. She squinted at the screen, then shrugged. If they want to pretend, let's give them a show. I smiled, not in amusement, but in solidarity. I slid a folder into my tote bag. Emails, bank transfers, the forged will. I won't yell, I said. I'll let them bury themselves. The restaurant was upscale, all high ceilings and linen napkins folded like art. Elise and Marcus waited in a private room, Elise in a lavender dress, Marcus shifting uncomfortably. Their hugs were stiff, like touching ghosts. Dinner began with a toast. Elise raised her glass. To family, may we always find our way back. I raised mine, my eyes locked on hers. To truth, may it never stay buried. Elise blinked, her smile faltering. Marcus laughed, nervous. I set my glass down and placed 3 manila envelopes on the table. Thud, thud, thud. What's this? Marcus asked, his voice tight. Clarity, I said, sliding one to our cousin Liam, a lawyer with a conscience. Emails, transfers, flight bookings, APS reports, the will, handwriting analysis on page 5. Liam's eyes scanned the pages, his shoulders stiffening. Elise's voice rose. This is harassment, Arden. I made you, Mom, invisible. I'm just turning on the light. Mom stood, her voice clear. You left me at O'Hare like I was already dead, and now you want peace? The room froze. Elise tried to stand, but Liam blocked her, gently. You committed inheritance fraud, he said quietly. Sit. They had no answer. We left, the night air crisp and freeing. Mom's voice softened. You didn't destroy them, Arden. You let them destroy themselves. But it wasn't over. The next morning, Evelyn called. We found something, a recording from Victor, titled, In Case I Can't Come Back. You need to hear it. We drove to her office, the city a blur of gray and brake lights. In a small room, Evelyn played the file. Dad's voice crackled through the speakers, a ghost from 4 years ago. If you're hearing this, something went wrong. Elise and Marcus came to me about the trust. They said it was for a loan. I thought I'd fix it later. I didn't. Rowena, protect your mother. Mom's shoulders shook, tears sliding down her face. He knew. He tried to stop them. We can use this. It's admissible. We can challenge the will. Mom wiped her face. I don't want their money. I want the truth on record, in court, in facts. I nodded. File it. Not for the estate, for her. As we left, the sky was dark but not heavy. At home, Mom set Dad's old wedding photo on the counter, lighting a candle beside it. She placed the locket next to it. He spoke, she said, and now, so can I. The next morning, a news van parked outside. Jenna Reyes from Channel 5 stood on our porch, her eyes kind but curious. We saw your legal filing. Will you speak on record? Mom nodded. If they want to hear it, let's tell them. We sat in the dining room, no makeup, no pretense. Mom spoke first. My name is Clara Langley. My children left me at O'Hare for 12 hours. They took the car. They knew I couldn't walk far. I don't want pity. I want people to stop forgetting those who raised them. I added, there was a trust. It was manipulated. This isn't about money. It's about truth. The segment aired at 7 p.m. By nightfall, my phone buzzed nonstop. The story went viral, strangers sharing their own tales of neglect. A nurse from Ohio offered resources. A student from Michigan asked how to help. But with the light came shadows. Evelyn called the next day. Elise and Marcus want to settle, quietly. Tell them, I said. The silence was their choice, not ours.